Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I wish to offer my thanks and congratulations to my honourable friend from Lanark and Hamilton East for bringing this debate forward. Madam Chair, I am delighted to participate in this debate, but I really wish it wasn't necessary. My contribution I did intend that it should be brief, but I'm afraid that my efforts to help the member for North Swindon necessarily make it a wee bit longer than I had thought it would be. I wish that the austerity agenda, a political choice, did not fall so heavily on the shoulders of those living with disabilities. I wish that the UK Government would put an end to this revolving door, this revolving culture of work capability assessments for those seeking to claim personal independence payments, although we all welcome, I think, that this merry-go-round of reassessments for those with chronic conditions at least will be removed. I wish that those who find themselves grappling with a health condition or disability which limits their ability to work, indeed their ability to live as full a life as they would wish, did not feel as though they were being punished for it. And I wish that those claiming personal independence payments or seeking to claim this benefit, which is gradually replacing disability living allowance, were not confronted with such a flawed system, a system in need of radical reform. I will indeed.
The honourable member will welcome the fact that an extra £3 billion is being spent now supporting those on DLA and PIP compared to just DLA in 2010, and the fact that it's now 23.5% on the highest rate compared to just 16% of DLA. This is good news.
I think the honourable gentleman would perhaps do well to remember the fact, according to OBR figures, that whilst more money is being spent, this is down to, according to the OBR, not to myself, this is down to the fact that demand has increased. So we should treat those figures, I think, with a bit more caution. The fact that the system is flawed is demonstrated by the fact that 65% of appeal decisions found in favour of claimants, which means that this 65% initially had their applications turned down, causing untold stress, anxiety about how they would cope in the future. The honourable gentleman from North Swindon spoke of work capability assessments as an opportunity. Well, I'm afraid that my constituents in North Ayrshire and Arran did not see this process as an opportunity. Perhaps the constituents in North Swindon found it so, but certainly in my part of the world that was not the case. Once again,
just to be very clear, I said about PIP assessments being an opportunity, not work capability assessments. That's for ESA. That needs to be reformed.
We're surrounded by such a wealth of opportunity, it's hard to keep up. None of the system that my constituents experience is seen as an opportunity. It's seen as extremely negative, intimidating and humiliating. And also the honourable gentleman talked about, when he talks about these assessments, or what was mentioned earlier, you really would think, and perhaps I misunderstood him, but I would suggest that if I've misunderstood you, then I certainly will not be alone. You would think that these assessments always resulted in somebody's entitlement, somebody's benefit being increased, and I can assure him that in my constituency that is almost never the case. Now, I know the honourable gentleman, perhaps in the interest of trying to be helpful to the Chamber today, talked about how we should go and see an assessment taking place. I have to tell the honourable gentleman, and perhaps this is just me, but I haven't done a survey or anything, but I have to say that these assessments are not a spectator sport. These are people's lives, and the people who go through them very often find them humiliating and very damaging. And I can tell the honourable gentleman that if I were to go through one of these assessments, the last thing I would want is an audience. Perhaps I may want a member of my family or a close friend, but I certainly wouldn't want my MP, who in effect would usually be a stranger, even though they might be a well-known name to me. I certainly wouldn't want this to turn into a spectator sport. So I think we have to be very careful of MPs filling the galleys when people are having their lives exposed and deconstructed by strangers themselves to the applicant. This really is a debate about social justice, and Employment Support Allowance is a form of financial support for those with life-limiting conditions, and therefore their ability to work, the ability to live a fully satisfying life, which we would all hope we would have access to, is effectively removed. And I think we have to remember that when we have these debates and when we have these discussions, and indeed when we have these assessments taking place. I know the honourable gentleman has informed the Chamber today that the assessors are there to help, and I am quite sure that the assessors think that that is the case as well. But claimants feel stressed. They are confronted by assessors who are, by definition, strangers, who have little or no knowledge of their particular condition. And we've all heard stories, and Parkinson's UK could keep you going all day if you haven't heard these stories. But we've all heard stories of people, for example, with conditions like Parkinson's in the past being asked by their work capability assessor, how long are you likely to have Parkinson's for? We know that the criteria for work capability assessment is flawed, and we know that in particular those with fluctuating conditions are always at risk of being assessed on what might be called, strangely, a good day, because it's all relative. But this is not taken into account by the work capability assessment, and nor is the impact of pain and fatigue, or indeed some of the conditions, such as Parkinson's, which are degenerative. And as a result, too many employment support allowance applicants are placed on the work-related activity group instead of the much more appropriate support group, which recognises that the claimant is simply not well enough to work. And I know, and I just want to reassure the honourable gentleman, I know that the government has reversed the need for repeated work capability assessments for the chronically ill, and this is welcome, but it simply does not go far enough. It really is a matter of great concern to all fair-minded people that from April 2017, people placed in the Employment Support Work-Related Activity Group will receive £30 per week less than someone in the same situation today. And for this reason, this failure of the system is even more alarming. Flawed criteria are a particular difficulty for people with conditions such as Parkinson's, although there's a whole range of conditions I could mention, but time forbids it. So flawed criteria creates a particular difficulty for people with Parkinson's in receipt of disability living allowance when being assessed for PIP. Under DLA, if a person could walk no more than 50 metres, they were eligible for support. For PIP, this distance has arbitrarily, randomly it seems, reduced to 20 metres. And this is such a short distance that it's not a useful or a helpful estimate of a person's mobility. And given the fluctuating nature of some conditions and the failure of the process to register this fluctuation, many people are losing their motability vehicles upon which they heavily rely. And I think the member from North Swindon really would be very interested to know that recent investigations have found that under DLA, 82% of people with Parkinson's receive the full mobility payment, whereas under PIP, that has dropped to 40%. That is a massive drop, and these people are losing their vehicles within 28 days of an assessment decision being taken against them. I don't see how anybody could come to this chamber and say that that's acceptable, because what is happening is that these people are being isolated in their own homes. They're being effectively punished for their illness, and their dependency on family members increases.
9 minutes, please.
Okay. I just want to, I'm being pressed by the Chair to conclude my remarks. Everybody welcomes the government's green paper. What we don't welcome is the headlong rush into cuts before this can be properly analysed and used to help us get this system correct. We need an evidence-based and compassionate approach, and quite frankly, Madam Chair, I don't see that. We should all want the same thing. We should all want to support people with disabilities into work and support those who cannot work. We need to make sure we're doing it properly. And I urge the Minister to reflect on that and all that's been suggested here today.